Story 1. The Old Woman. One night my friends and I stopped at a gas station. I ran in to grab something, and the rest of them stayed at the car that was parked at a gas pump. As I walked out towards the car, all of a sudden my 3 friends started yelling and screaming, just losing it in the car. I get in, my friends still losing their minds. Dude, did you see that? Oh my God, what was going on? Yes, indeed, what was going on? One of my friends finally calms down and points to this old woman and says, "Hey, that old lady just disappeared and then reappeared as you were walking out of the gas station." Apparently the woman was there while I was in the gas station and then disappeared as I walked out of the station, then reappeared out of thin air as I walked towards the car. All of my friends swear up and down that they watched her this whole time. I believe them because I watched them fixating their eyes to something behind me and then proceeding to absolutely lose their minds as I was walking towards the car. Then I'm sitting in the car. Everyone goes silent. They're shushing each other. The woman was walking towards our car. We all turned pale and pretended not to notice. She walked directly up to our car, walked right to the driver's side window, continued to stand there for about 10 seconds before walking away. I don't really believe in the paranormal, but there was something going on with that lady. Story 2. Shadows in the hall. I was laying in bed sometime during my middle school year, trying to get to sleep. My room was right next to the stairs and looked directly into the bathroom across the hall. Both the door to the bathroom and the door to my room were open. My room and my parents' room were to the right as you come up the stairs. My sister's room and the guest bedroom were on the left. My parents were downstairs, finishing up bills or something. My younger sister was already in bed for the night. Light was bleeding up the stairs, faintly, from the computer room where my parents were, so that the shadows in the bathroom were pitch black, but the hallway was very dimly illuminated. Suddenly I had a feeling of I hadn't been able to sleep, so I was tossing and turning, but this feeling of unease made me look out my door, which had a decent view of the dimly illuminated hallway and the black shadows of the bathroom. From the right side of the hallway, my parents' room, a dark man-sized shaped figure glided across the floor, stopped in front of the bathroom. The shadows, or robe, or whatever it was cloaked in, were darker than the pitch black of the bathroom, yet somehow defined enough to tell that it was standing facing to the left, towards the other end of the hallway. Then its head turned to me, and it just looked at me for what felt like an eternity. I couldn't bring myself to move. I was so surprised and scared. The thing just stood there for a few seconds before turning its head back towards to the left, where I was facing, and glided down the hallway out of sight. After a few seconds of nothing happening, I got up and crept to the hallway. There was nothing out there. The door to my sister's room was closed and hadn't moved. The guest bedroom was completely empty. My parents were downstairs, as if nothing had happened. The hallway floor usually creaked, but it made no sound. The stairs creaked in certain areas, but it had also made no sound. There had been no sound of walking, no sound of doors or windows opening or shutting, nothing. I still think about that creepy shadow to this day. At least a decade later, I have no good explanation. We live in an area where several bloody battles were fought. There's always stories of ghost soldiers or apparitions. I even had another creepy incident where I was chased by something that I couldn't see in the woods near one of the battlefields, but thankfully I never saw that shadow in the hallway again. Story 3. The Running Man. I'm in the Navy and had just got off a swing shift on base, leaving at approximately 11:45 p.m. from the base. The base I was on is part of old plantation land, but I never really thought anything. The part I worked was on the water of a nearby river, and the road back passed along the river for about a half a mile before turning inland. Fog had a tendency of building up on the river, especially in the fall and winter, and the fog rolled across the road this particular night. As I was driving along the road, coming back from work, I saw a man running on the side of the road. This is nothing special, on a military base. People run all the time to keep up physical condition, but this was almost midnight, which I found strange. He was wearing nothing reflective at all, seemingly wearing dark clothing. As my car came upon him, he immediately darted out in front of my car at a speed I had never seen before. I slammed on my brakes, but it was too late. I expected to hear and feel a massive thud as I hit this poor fellow, but as the car passed through him, he vanished without a trace. I got out of my car, headlights on bright, searching the area with my flashlight for a person anywhere around my car, but I was the only one for as far as I could see on the road. This scared the daylights out of me, to the point that I started searching inside the car to ensure that I did not have a hitchhiker with me. After getting back in the car, I drove as fast as I could, with my interior lights on, to the nearest well-lit area. I locked the doors, left the lights on, and I called my father to relate this incident. After 20 minutes of consoling me, I finally got my wits about me, enough to drive home. However, the story did not end there. From this night on, something was different about my apartment. There was a presence that I hadn't felt in the months before the incident. I began to refuse to sit in the living room alone, altogether, because of the feeling like someone was watching me. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see the bathroom light on, clear as day, but when I turned to look over, it'd be off again. It would feel like someone would sit down on the couch next to me, but I was the only one in the whole apartment. Finally, one weekend, my father came out to visit. Growing up with numerous ghostly and at times demonic experiences, most of which he refuses to talk about, he has become highly sensitive. The first day he arrived, he used the key that I had left him to get in while I was at work. When I got home, having said nothing to him about my experiences in the apartment, the first thing he asked me was if I ever got the feeling like someone was in the kitchen area, peeking over that half wall at the television. I froze in my tracks. Over the course of his week-long visit, he said he also thought that he saw the bathroom light turn itself on and then off again, and that he felt someone else sit on the couch next to him. He saw a shadow of a man, mainly in the kitchen area, who would periodically then lean over the half wall like he was looking over at what was on the TV. But he said that he never saw or felt anyone in the bedrooms. I continued living from the night of the incident, driving home, through the following few months, until I received orders to leave. I have not felt the presence of the running man. Story 4. My ghosts. I started seeing and hearing ghosts when I was about 8 years old. We lived in London, and for a short period of time, when my dad was in the Air Force, before we got moved into base housing, the place looked like a castle, at least to an 8-year-old. It was huge, and this was where I first started hearing. Several years later, my parents split up, and we were back in the United States. We were living in an older house in Missouri, and that's when I started seeing people. There was this tall, black, shadowy spirit that would come and sit at the end of my bed. I was not scared of him. He seemed nice. I've seen and heard many ghosts in the various houses but the one that gets me the most is when we moved to Florida. It started with our first one. We were renters, and smoking was prohibited in the house. So I would go out to the lanai to have a cigarette. I would see all these people everywhere, hundreds of people. At first I thought it was just my imagination, but later I realized they needed my help. I'd seen a couple of them walk through the house and into my bedroom. I really felt they needed my help, as they couldn't find their way out. They asked me where they were supposed to go. I said, follow the light, which apparently was in my bedroom. Most of them eventually. I asked a few what had happened and was told that there was lots of shaking. I tried to research this and found that there had been 2 earthquakes way back in the 1800s. I think that maybe these spirits are tied to that earthquake. One evening, I was sitting on the lanai with my husband, and I saw a man and woman on opposite sides of the lanai, dressed in older, kind of like Little House on the Prairie. My husband was with me, but he didn't see them. I could see them plain as a few months later. I was visiting my kids in Kansas, and my husband was on the lanai by himself, alone in the house. He called me, telling me he finally believed because the lanai sliding door started rattling for absolutely no reason. No sonic boom, no earthquake, no wind, no explanation. There's also a little girl dressed in very old attire that would stand outside the lanai and watch us. I got her name, but for the life of me I can't. I believe it was Madeline. When we moved into our second house, I had the urge to go back to the old. It was only a half block away. I'm not sure why, I just had to go talk to someone. There was the little girl from the first house. She wanted help. She followed me home and disappeared the next day. To this day, I don't know if I really helped her or not. I do go back to that first house and talk a couple times a week. I work for the new. I haven't seen the little girl since. I'd seen people at the second house, but not nearly as frequently or as many as the first house. Eventually moved into our third house. I've seen a tall man, usually in my laundry room, although I've seen him in my kitchen as well. I hear both him and a woman, but I haven't seen her. They call my name. I also occasionally hear growling. I don't think it's my dogs or my cats, because I always check on them. It's not them. This house is only about 8 miles from the first two. Since I've moved to Florida, this has been the most active paranormal time of my life. I'm still trying to do research and figure it all out, but sometimes I come up empty-handed. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the stories. If you did, hit that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. Bye!